Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. It's Tuesday morning and we've got one heck of a show for you because we're going to speak to some people that you probably don't see very often on regular TV or regular radio, or listen to them on regular radio. I'm talking about Mike Fairclough. He's Britain's most outspoken headmaster. He's a guy who has run schools all over Britain, but who was actually effectively cancelled for some of his views, because during the years of COVID, he was not somebody who went along with it. He was the only headmaster who basically questioned the idea of vaccinating children. He was the only headmaster who questioned the idea of making children wear masks. And even he was the only headmaster who actually questioned the efficacy of sending kids home and telling them to stay there. Because, of course, what we've got now is a similar situation brewing in the National Health Service, because what we know is that we keep being told by people that there's going to be some kind of terrible sort of plague on all of our houses because of this ridiculous flu that's going around. They're calling it super flu. They're calling it a flu-nami. They're telling us that the NHS is completely and utterly overwhelmed by cases, which is not entirely true. But he's going to give us his view on exactly what it's all about and why so many people are now still, even after their experiences of COVID, going to do what they're told by the government. We'll also be telling you how ridiculous it has been over the course of the last few days, trying to get any sense out of the government on the NHS and out of the doctors' strike as well. Also, we'll be listening to Mike Fairclough talk about his new book, which he's got out now. It's all about John Mappin. It's called Sovereignty, and it talks all the way through about the way this country is going, exactly how we got to where we got to. And he'll be mentioning Charlie Kirk in there as well. Also coming up, we're joined by weServed man. He is, of course, Hugh Andree, former military specialist, a man who set up a company called weServed to help veterans. We're going to talk about how many veterans are homeless this Christmas and what we can do to try and get them housing, what we can do to try and fix it all up. Lots of other stories to talk about as well. And we'll be doing, of course, Roundup of the Year coming up very shortly. We'll put that out next week. We'll be doing Plank of the Year as well. And we want you to go to our YouTube channel, like it, subscribe to it. We've got 114,000 subscriptions already, which is brilliant. This is, of course, the real home of common sense. Let's get it on. Welcome back to the show. For those of you who think we're in another health crisis, because, of course, it's winter time and the NHS doesn't seem to know how to deal with it, there are lots of things we need to talk about, particularly how some members of the media and how some people in authority, particularly in the NHS and particularly in the world of politics, think that we should go back to the bad old days of COVID and put masks on and start social distancing and stay at home and shut schools down and not let anybody talk to each other and tell children that they're going to kill their grandmothers. I kid you not, that's what's going on. So we thought we'd better talk to an authority on all of this. And he's a man that I've known tangentially in the past through our sets of children who were at school together, strangely enough, in Sussex many years ago. He is Mike Fairclough. He's known as Britain's most outspoken headmaster, but he also has become an author. And Mike, you're now pretty much a pioneer, I would say, in the world of what I would call sensible healthcare and sensible medicine and sensible behaviour. Welcome to the show and very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too. Yes, thank you for that introduction. I mean, I don't think it's difficult to be on the sensible side if you just apply a bit of critical thinking and rational logic. I mean, it really is that simple. But of course, the UK government did a real number on the British public with its plethora of various things which comprise the censorship industrial complex. So, of course, during the COVID years, we had the 77th Brigade, a unit of the British Army. We even had a unit of the RAF, the counter disinformation units, which worked in liaison with MI5 and MI6, the rapid response unit, etc. And then, of course, the nudge unit, the psychological nudge unit, which was all of these guys were steering public opinion, crushing dissent, censoring online debate, etc. So those people who were susceptible to that sort of brainwashing, which I've got this kind of figure that it's around 75%. I think it's about 3/4 of people, just on my own sort of anecdotal analysis. Most people are susceptible to that stuff. But then, of course, it was a military grade psyop. Usually that kind of stuff would be used on Al Qaeda and ISIS, and the UK government decided to use it on us instead. So anyway, those of us who are kind of immune to that kind of manipulation just looked and applied a bit of logic and saw that the measures that were in place during COVID were tyrannical, to say the least. And of course, it's all come back again, and it's sad actually to see that some people have started putting masks on out of fear or conformity, or because they just believe that they work. It's COVID part 2.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Because I would have hoped that because of the people that I spoke to during that time, who just were never going to be fooled again. I think I'm hoping that there's fewer people now who would be falling for these measures, because at the time, many people did what they were told by the government because they assumed the government were doing good things and assumed the government had their best interests at heart, when it turned out that actually that wasn't the case at all.
Yeah. So these sorts of things play on people's good nature, and it's the same with any of the orthodoxies, whether it's gender ideology or climate alarmism or any of it, vaccines, any of this stuff, war with Russia, whatever it might be. They'll always try and present things as being, if you're in favour of the orthodoxy, then you're on the good side and you're kind and you're a nice human being. And if you're not, you are immediately far right, and that means racist, and on the extremely bad side. It was just to say as well. So when COVID actually kicked off, I thought it was a real national and international disaster. So I remember driving my car and hearing Boris Johnson on the radio saying many of us will lose loved ones, and I actually went back to my school and sent an email to my staff and to the parents of the school saying, look, until we know what's going on, maybe you'd like to keep your children at home, because we'd just been told by the Prime Minister that people were actually going to die. And it was really interesting because the same people who later criticised me for having the complete opposite view were highly critical of me suggesting that parents could keep their children at home. And the reason for that was because the direction hadn't come from the authorities. And what we noticed during the COVID era is that if somebody on the BBC or in the NHS or anyone who's like in Parliament or wearing a suit says do X, Y, or Z, lots of people will follow that particular order. And of course, there was that the famous Milgram experiment from I think the 50s or 60s, which showed exactly that people will go along with incredibly dangerous ideologies and actions based on their sort of adoration of people in authority. So it was interesting. That was what happened initially. And then because I was in a school of 365 children, but 150 of them were actually in the school during the COVID era, during the lockdowns. Right. And I had about 30 out of my 60 members of staff. So I was around about 200 people every single day. And after about 3 weeks of noticing that no one was dropping down dead, and also hearing from parents who worked in the local hospital that was practically empty, that's when the penny dropped. But it was only really when I voiced my concerns about the COVID vaccine rollout to children that I became absolutely public enemy number one.
Yeah. And that was when it started to get really, really tricky, I think, for an awful lot of parents, because, you know, my kids were in Sussex. I was in London. I didn't see them for about 8 weeks right at the beginning of the whole COVID business, because their mother wasn't too sure if I should come out of the city, where everybody thought that COVID was much more kind of concentrated. I wasn't sure, even though I was working every day, going into a studio at Talk Radio, but I didn't know if I drove my car outside of the M25 that I might be stopped by the cops, even though I had an essential workers badge, like something out of East Berlin. I was going, no, I'm an essential worker, and it was like I might not be able to get back to London, so I'm not going. So it was just really odd. And I remember driving around the empty streets of London thinking, this is like the end of days. But like you, suddenly it kind of wasn't,
Yeah, and this is the extraordinary thing, and it's really bizarre. Bearing in mind this is very recent history. It wasn't even so. It started 5 years ago, but then it carried on for the next sort of 2 and a bit, 3 years. So it's very, very recent history. But it feels like it's something that people want to forget about, not because of the trauma of it, but I think because of how embarrassing it was as well. Remember that we had things like COVID marshals, like people who were paid to snitch on other people, and then things like the rule of six, where people would get nicked in their house if they had like 7 people around there instead of 6 people. I mean, complete and utter nonsense. And the height of the insanity for me personally happened when so I was making sure that I was aligning my messaging regarding vaccines very, very sensibly and in a balanced manner. I was just saying to parents, just think carefully before you make a decision. You know, we've been told by the medical authorities that children are at an extremely low risk of serious illness from COVID. There's no long-term safety data for them. And then later I was also saying that that it doesn't stop a child from catching or spreading COVID, all of the things that we discovered fairly soon. And I aligned my messaging with people like Alison Pearson from The Telegraph and other sort of respected, sensible voices. Molly Kingsley was another one who, you know, we were careful to make sure that all of our messaging was palatable to people who might have completely the opposite view to our own. And I was expressing these things on social media in my own time at home, in the evening and at the weekend, but nonetheless I was anonymously reported to the authorities on 3 separate occasions, investigated 3 times. Finally, I was also reported to the counter extremism and terrorism agencies like Prevent. I was monitored by the counter disinformation unit. I mean, basically, and I wasn't alone in that. I mean, by the way, I was cleared across the board every single time. But we had other voices, Julia Hartley Brewer, Molly's one of them, Alison, etc. Loads of people who were treated as enemies of the state simply for saying that we didn't feel that children should have a medical intervention that they didn't need and didn't have long-term safety data. So I think a lot of the silence around this now is because of the sort of embarrassment about what happened. But then it's also, I think, incredibly chilling how quickly things can change. So when all of the messaging came out last week about, you know, you must wear masks, and like if you're in an office place, and I can guarantee schools will be an absolute nightmare because we saw how. So just to give you a statistic, I was the only serving head teacher or school principal out of 43,500 in the entire United Kingdom to publicly question the COVID vaccine rollout to children. And yet I had colleagues who are head teachers and school principals who were equally concerned but didn't speak out. So there's a mixture within the education system of people who are just a bit dim really and don't think critically about things, and they're quite dangerous in their own right. But then there's another group who know that some of the things that go on are wrong, but they self-censor out of fear of reprisals, and not just on that issue, but on things like gender ideology in schools, climate alarmism, you name it. And I think that that's the biggest obstacle and the most dangerous part of the free speech battle at the moment in the UK is not so much the authorities, because we've always had like tyrants ruling us and wanting all the money and the power and so on. It's the members of the public who haven't got a backbone and won't stand up and do the right thing. I think that's what's needed. And going back to your point about, you know, we had loads of people after the last time who said, oh, next time it comes around, I won't go along with it. But people do because they conform and they get concerned about their reputations, even things as small as, you know, getting kicked off social media or something like that. People prioritize their self-preservation ahead of self-sacrifice, which I think is something which has changed over the last few generations.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to have an awful lot to talk about in the coming year, Mike, because there's so much there that I want to talk to you about, and also about education as well. So we'd like to make you a regular contributor if we can. But let's just finish up with your new book, Sovereignty. It's just come out relatively recently. It's your 8th book, I think. It's all about John Mappin, who's quite an interesting character. I've met John a couple of times. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, so this is so it's called Sovereignty, John Mappin, The Restoration of Sanity. And so for anyone who doesn't know John, he was the one who, so he owns Camelot Castle Hotel down in Tintagel in Cornwall, and he turns down an offer from the UK government of £20 million to turn his wonderful castle basically into a migrant processing centre. So the plan was to drop in about 300 or 400 unvetted illegal migrants and into a small village of 1,500 people, and John to then just fly off into the sunset and for everything else to unfold. And he correctly said, well, if I do that, it will destroy the economy, it will completely disrupt the fragile and delicate and precious ecosystem that is the Cornish Tintagel community. It will mean that long-standing members of staff that I have will be no longer working for me. And so he took a really strong stand there. And but the book really goes into a lot of different things, because he was also very, very close friends with the late Charlie Kirk. And during the writing of the book, Charlie was assassinated. So the whole book pivoted at that point, and I feel so for me it's my proudest work to date. I think it's my best written and most profound work, because it covers everything from free speech to averting war with Russia. It's got lots of different bits. I had the pleasure of meeting Nigel Farage down in Tintagel as well. At Camelot Castle. He was a guest of John's, and it kind of looks at John's amazing diplomacy, which covers the whole of the nation, but also crosses continents, because, of course, he's met President Donald Trump. He knows the family. He's very close with Candace Owens. A lot of the current things which are going around the media world at the moment are in that book, and it's I'm just really excited about it and very proud of it.
Brilliant. Well, listen, I'm going to get my hands on it and I'm going to read it, and we're going to talk about it more as well, but we're out of time for the moment. Where can they get the book, Mike, if they want to find it?
Go onto Amazon initially, but it's also just been picked up by Reginary, which is the US's longest standing conservative publisher. They publish President Donald Trump's work, Charlie Kirk, etc., etc. So that's where it will be in America. But for the time being, everyone can get it from every major outlet and bookstore. But just go onto Amazon and get it there initially, if I were you, until it's everywhere else.
Brilliant. Well, listen, great to meet you, Mike. Thank you very much indeed. We'll talk again soon.
Fabulous. Thank you very much indeed.
Mike Fairclough there. Fascinating stories to tell, fascinating stories that will emerge over time. And the book, as I say, is, of course, available now. It's called Sovereignty, and it's available on Amazon. We'll hear a lot more, I think, in the coming months from Mike when we talk about education, when we talk about health, when we talk about all manner of different things on the home of common sense. So here we are in our brand new studio. We're not long away from Christmas, as you can see. We've got a little Christmas tree here to keep the festive spirits up. There's a lot of people who will be having a very curtailed Christmas this year. Some people won't be able to spend the same kind of money as they used to, but we should also think about some of the less fortunate people at this time of the year, particularly veterans, some of whom are sleeping on the streets of this country, unfortunately. I'm going to talk now, however, to Hugh Andree, former military recruitment man, former military service man as well, of course, and now weServed man. Hugh Andree, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Mike, good morning. It's great to see you back. You've been missed.
I have been missed. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. This is our brand new studio, and so you're one of the first guests to appear on the brand new show. Thank you for doing it. Tell us a bit about weServed, because for a new audience that we've got, you've been going now for quite a few months. Tell us about the organisation and how the year has been for you.
Yeah, well, Mike, I mean, you've been hugely supportive over the last couple of years, and we've done series on Putin. We've done the Veterans Voice, and I think the Veterans Voice, especially, I think we did a 20 plus episodes, and each time, I never forget you saying, every single veteran you brought on has been really impressive, and they've done stuff.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. And the time at the moment when I'm looking around, and I'm not in the UK at the moment, I'm off a little island off West Coast Sahara. And one of the reasons I've come away is to get away from people who don't do stuff and to get away from all the fools and the idiots. But all the time, veterans, I'll use a polite word, get stuff done. So as you know, for many years, I've been supporting the veterans community, put over 4,000 into employment. And the common theme coming out from all of them was that once they finished military service, they kind of felt like they had been just disowned.
Yeah.
That's it. Off you go. And you could argue, is it the Ministry of Defence's responsibility? I mean, they're under-resourced, they're undermanned, they're underfunded. We can come on to that. But the common theme has always been from the veterans community that they need jobs, they want training, they want housing and accommodation, ideally in front of other people, because they serve their country. Their mates give their lives and made the ultimate sacrifice. They want healthcare and support. And I was talking to someone else the other day, explaining that we have a tsunami of a healthcare problem approaching on the horizon, because we went into Iraq in 2008 and we had that debacle of a withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2019. And your viewers might not know, but the sort of the gestation period for PTSD is 14 years. So those in 2008, even I can work it out, 2022, it started. And for those in the latter years of what we call the Opheric generation, we had the Optelic from Iraq and the Opheric for Afghanistan, because the Ministry of Defense always gives a live operation a name. That generation of 20 to 40-year-olds, but honestly, there's some serious problems coming down the tracks. And that's one of the reasons why at weServed, I've just hired an amazing guy, ex-Coldstream Guards officer, 7 years in the NHS. He was a Gold Commander during COVID, and we're going to be launching in January a series of healthcare and wellbeing products for men and women and their families, etc. And by the way, we're also partnering with the NHS, Op Restore, which Op Restore and Op Courage are two veteran-focused pathways. Op Restore is for those with physical injuries, and Op Courage is for those with mental health challenges. And I'm a big believer, and we should be doing public-private partnership. And that's what we're going to be doing. And so we're going to be launching this amazing new offering for veterans. And by the way, Mike, can I just say that we've now established the weServed platform so that a veteran can invite up to 5 members of his family.
Wow! So you've really moved it along, haven't you? Since
we have done. The employment is not. It's going okay. I'd like it to go better. We have this thing called the Armed Forces Covenant, which 13,000 companies have signed, but we're still trying to find them and saying, hey, come on, how about hiring one?
Yeah.
But we've got over 1,000 vacancies now on our job board for veterans and their spouses and their families. But we need more. We need more employers. And if you're out there and you're a healthcare provider, or you have training courses that can help us fill all these gaps that no one wants to do in hospitality or construction, engineering, and I know veterans will get it done.
Yes. Well, we keep being told, don't we, that there are jobs that apparently British people don't want to do. But I'm sure that there will be plenty of veterans who would rather be working doing whatever job, they're not working, and certainly those of them who have sort of fallen through the cracks and ended up on the streets for one reason or another. And there's quite a lot of those this Christmas, aren't there?
About 3,000.
And so,
Yeah, no, absolutely. But we've also, they've got to pay them a fair wage. And I've had a one or two employers who've reached out to us. So, can you get us some veterans to do security? Yeah, of course. And when they tell me what the hourly rate is, I say, look, forgive me, but I pay my cleaner more than that.
Yeah.
So just have a bit of respect, because we, the taxpayers, have paid on average about £100,000 to get a soldier trained. So, I keep saying it's the time for UK PLC to get a return on that investment and start employing them and putting them to good use.
Yeah. Well, we hear a lot about defence these days, don't we? This year alone, we've had Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, promising to put more money into defence, promising to put us all, he keeps saying that we're going to be on a war footing, that we're going to have to be prepared for an invasion of some kind or another. John Healey, the Defence Secretary, similarly talking about, talking a good game, I suppose you would say. But we're not on a war footing. We can't be on a war footing, can we, at this point?
Well, in 2030 or 2027 or whenever they keep saying, we need money now. We need money now. We need, new systems. We need more of it, and we need to be recruiting more men and women into the armed forces. But I have to say, Mike, would I want to go back into the armed forces today if, when I look at how our boys and girls are looked after when they leave, really? I'm not sure. We need to start looking after our veterans the way they do in America.
Yeah.
Through education, housing, training, healthcare. And the Americans have no problem recruiting, because if you go into the American Armed Forces, one, you're going to get an education, and two, you're going to get healthcare cover for life afterwards.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be charging our veterans £30 for a rail card. They should get one. They should be at the top of the housing list.
Yeah. It's a respect thing, isn't it?
It is a respect thing. I agree with the NHS when it comes to healthcare. I've got dodgy knees, ankles, and backs, but I'm okay. I'm getting around. I went out cycling. There are people in need of new knees and ankles, and they need back surgery now. I don't, so I don't expect to be ahead of them. But when I have challenges, and that I have done, I have CPTSD, and I was really fortunate. My family, I had people around me to support me. But Tommy Atkins up in Grimsby or wherever doesn't, and this is why certainly Op Restore and Op Courage, which Johnny Mercer got up and running, they are really, really good. I benefited from Op Courage, but it took me 8 weeks to get a referral. And then I had to wait another 6 months because they got no counsellors. So again, the government needs to be putting money into the likes of Op Restore, Op Courage, so that our veterans, they can get help now, because and I know getting help in 12 weeks might just be too late.
That is the problem, isn't it? And you and I spoke many times to so many veterans that you brought us through Veterans Voice to talk to, who had issues with getting somewhere to live, getting looked after properly, and just being given the sort of basic human decency. I mean, this has also been a year where we've seen more potential prosecutions of veterans from Northern Ireland. I think one case was just recently dropped. But for people who have been under horrible, ghastly pressure and duress for the best part of 50 years practically since the Troubles.
Yeah, I mean, I have a bee in my bonnet because I'm from that Northern Ireland time. Yeah. I did 4 tours over there. But I'm really sorry. You cannot have a government telling veterans and the armed forces that we support you, and then overturn the Northern Ireland Legacy Act and start going after, with all respect to them, 70, 80-year-old men who are serving in Northern Ireland. I'm sorry, that just doesn't wash. That's outrageous. You know, you can be a terrorist, you can get an apology letter, we're really sorry, off you go. But in order to, let's be brutally honest here, to appease Sinn Féin and whomever, we're going to go after our veterans again. I'm sorry, but Labour will lose every single veterans vote on that basis. And that Al Khan's, Louise Sanders-Jones, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's finish up with a bit on Ukraine. You and I have spoken to people that you know, certainly, who have been out there, in a sort of private capacity to some extent. But we saw a member of the, I think it was a member of the British Armed Forces, was it not, in the last couple of weeks, who was killed. It wasn't clear exactly how, but as a sort of result of some kind of friendly fire situation, possibly. But a lot of people have been asking me, and I don't know if you could answer this question, but I mean, are British troops actively working out in Ukraine? Is there anything official going on? I mean, obviously, it might not be possible to say, but what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, all of those who served received emails saying, please do not go out and serve over there. My understanding is that we haven't had anyone serving over there. I, of course, am not privy to the exact info. I'd be really surprised. But we do, you know, the British Armed Forces does do advisory training tasks. And as we all know, we've supplied them with tanks, with aircraft, and other bits of military hardware, and they have to be trained on that. And some of that hardware, Mike, has to be serviced in the field. So I suspect, and I don't know the answer, but I suspect, and I am aware of that individual, that possibly they were doing that sort of advisory role. Perhaps they were doing sort of a repair, maintenance, overall role. But I don't believe for one moment that we've got members of the currently serving armed forces in Ukraine.
Okay.
Not serving, Mike. Me in an advisory capacity on that sort of line, perhaps. But I don't know. You know, I'm not qualified to say yes or no.
Sure. Appreciate it. Well, listen, weServed will go from strength to strength, I'm sure, in 2026. And hopefully when you're back, we'll have you in the brand new studio and you can come and have a cup of tea with us.
Looking forward to it.
And we've got lots to talk about because we've got a lot of plans that we want to help you out with veterans, which we'll talk you through as well.
Well, that's great, Mike. You've been very supportive, and I know the community is really appreciative. The amount of messages I get when I speak with you or you comment. So thank you for your support.
Not at all. Thank you very much. Have a great Christmas, and we'll see you soon.
And to you, all the best.
Cheers, Hugh.
Bye-bye.
Well, that brings us to the end of another fascinating show. We'll keep bringing you more fascinating guests and more news as we go. Of course, we're going to be going live from this brand new studio. As you can see, we've got the Christmas ornaments going on. We've got the microphone here. We've got all the information we need. We're going to be breaking news for you every single weekday morning from 7 to 9 on the Mike Graham Show. It's going to be a brand new breakfast show, the like of which you'll never have seen before. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. With yet another show with yet more fascinating guests. And of course, you can get in touch with us on X. You can get in touch with us now on Instagram, where we've got an account, The Mike Graham Show. You can get us on TikTok. We are literally everywhere. And we're looking to expand ever more into more stuff on YouTube, more stuff on Rumble, more stuff on Facebook. We'll be talking to you from every single possible channel that you can get your hands on. And as you might want to know, I'm going to be telling you every single day about what is going on and the reasons why it's going on and who's really behind it. And despite the fact that there are many of them out there, just remember this: don't be a plank.